Your friend has got a lot to share.
All right, here it is, the 24th of November. Some people call it Turkey Day +1, and we are back with another edition of Radio Friends again, November 24th, 2023. And I'm Steve Parker. We've already got quite a few people signing in, and one of the things we're going to be discussing today, and I can already see some of the alumni showing up, is back to the WPOP days, back when it was the DRC POP wars, and we know we've always been a little bit heavy. Go figure that we're a little heavy on the DRC side when we started putting this thing together with the 100th anniversary of Big D. But anyways, we're going to bring some folks in. So let me just see who we've got with us so far. We got Russ Oasis over there, Dave Overson, John Landry, Pete Salant is here. Judge Harrigan is here. Let's see, we've got Jim Harrington, Ted Dalaku, Bob Craig, John Landry, Ed Bruder, and have I got everybody there, guys? I'm going around on my screen.
Clark Schmidt.
Huh?
Clark Schmidt.
Clark Schmidt.
Oh, there's Clark. Okay, yeah, Clark. I got him right over here. All right. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, teacher.
Morning.
Good morning, Mr. Parker.
Morning, Mr. Parker.
Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that I'm the guy who's supposed to be able to know what the hell I'm doing over here, and I don't have a clue.
We froze.
If I'm the grown-up in the room, things have really gone awry. You guys are all my bigger, Big D brothers. Yeah, what we had talked a little bit last week about trying to, kind of lean things towards the POP direction. And first and foremost, did everybody have a nice Thanksgiving?
Yes, teacher. We did. That'll bring you what happened.
I think I'm just going to get out of here and let you guys go at it. So why don't we throw it on? Lee Gordon is in there, aren't you, Lee?
I'm here. I don't know why my video isn't in, but
We have a picture of you.
yeah, but
Headshot. Yeah.
That's a good shot. Maybe we should just leave that.
Yeah.
Looking good. That's when we all had a dress like that.
Yeah,
Well, let's dive into POP. I mean, we've got Judge over here. We've got Lee Gordon over here. You guys probably can take us back as far as you can. Give us a little bit of what it was like over there. Maybe, Lee or Judge, who goes back the furthest into POP?
Judge was there before I was.
Well, Judge, take us back.
Clark was there before any of us.
Oh,
That's right. Yeah, and I was the last one out the door.
All right, so let's start with Clark then. Clark.
6970. Yeah, Danny Clayton hired me, and it was because that wonderful gentleman went to Vietnam.
Frank Holler.
And I never really met Frank, but at one of our radio reunions, we got together and sat in his Volkswagen, and I heard some of his great tapes that he did. I wish they were, still available. But I was in my senior year at college at the University of Hartford. I got the all-night show. Gary Gerard called and congratulated me. And he said, whatever you do not put your hands underneath the console. And I said, well, why not? Does anybody know the answer to this? Pretty gross.
I'm thinking maybe there was somebody down there.
That's where Rusty parked his boogers.
Oh my God.
So anyway, that was my introduction. Bob Paiva was the music director at the time, was unique. I was in touch with Bob recently on social media. I'm in touch with Dandy Dan Clayton, Ken Walt. He's like 85 and doing voiceover work in Las Vegas. And
he's also acted in a number of movies. He was in one of the Dan Brown Vatican conspiracy movies. He played a cardinal in that. He's done a lot of walk-on roles on television and movies.
But during that time, Lee Baby Sims was there.
Yeah.
And one of my, somewhere on an air check, I have myself starting with WPOP at a shift break, and Jack Armstrong came running into the control room, sneak up behind me, and started screaming, "You're here!" And it was pretty funny. He was quite a character too. So they were fun times, and it was always because I couldn't pass Charlie's audition or whatever, but just as well because I didn't stay at POP that long. I was actually working at Channel 30 and Channel 18 as a TV director and booth announcer at the same time, and trying to get myself out of the University of Hartford, which I did despite the student strike, and then went on to Boston. So great times.
POP
Great
had
radio
flashes
wars.
of brilliance.
DRC was just always the champion with John Rohde and Sandy Beach. I first met Dick Robinson at Blue Hills Avenue in the fall of '66, when I went up there and said, we're starting a radio station at the University of Hartford. Would you be on the board of directors? And we've known each other ever since. So great times, great people. And wow.
Didn't they do a good Drake format for a while? POP?
Yeah,
it was excellent. Excellent.
Well, they called it a Drew format, believe it or not.
Paul Drew.
And well, for Paul Drew. And it was a modified Drake. But
Drake.
The jingles were there, and
Yeah.
the speed was there, and
It wasn't boss enough.
no, you're right.
It wasn't boss enough. They
No.
needed
Punch.
Bill Hennis. They needed Bill Hennis to bring in the real set of Drake jingles and make the jocks boss jocks to deliver in that semi-mean tone, which, by the way, guys, is my favorite format of all time. But they needed to sound a little more like CKLW.
I think somebody who predates even Clark has just joined us. I think the man who's registering on your screen as owner is Mike Green in Florida.
Oh my goodness!
Oh, wow.
Mike.
I remember.
Mike, I think you were at POP from about 66 through 70, maybe.
68 to 70.
Okay, so who was the PD then in '68?
Dirty Dan Clayton, or Kenny Walt, as we know him now.
Right. Yeah.
And yeah, it was. I replaced Tommy Tyler. He went down to FIL. I came up from Big Ways in Charlotte.
Tom
And,
Tyler.
Who
Tom
was
Tyler was at POP
Yes, he was.
because
Yeah,
I
he
worked
was
with Tom
production
Tyler
director.
at TIC.
Same guy.
He did afternoon
Really?
drive, and I didn't think he had been in the market before that. I knew he came up from Philadelphia, but I didn't think he had been in Hartford before that at all.
What
Are
name
you-
did he Ed? What name did he use? He wasn't Tom Tyler on POP. Was
No,
he?
he was. He did like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And that was back when Dan Clayton had people doing 3-hour shifts. And he also did a lot of the production, then went back to Philadelphia at FIL. And then a little later came up to TIC and worked with Ted.
Yeah, and he did afternoon drive. As a matter of fact, when he married Kathy Clark,
Yeah.
I was his best man at the
Catherine.
wedding in Rhode Island. I remember standing there. They were at a little arch at this restaurant right on Narragansett Bay, and the little arch. And she's coming down the aisle, and Tom says to me quietly, says, "Jesus, I feel like I'm making a mistake." And I said, "Well," I said, "tell me now, and I'll cover for you."
You remember the
he
Woody
bailed out on that.
Roberts and Miss Fox stuff that used to go on the air?
What?
Woody Roberts and Miss Fox.
Woody Roberts, I remember.
Miss Fox is still alive and well, and somewhere in I think Arizona. With
Yeah, and her daughter is Graham Winters, who was at DRC for many years.
Oh my God!
Oh,
In fact, Marcia married Bill Winters at POP.
Bill Winters, who was at CBS FM before me.
Yes, and died very young.
Yeah, he did. He died very young.
How about Woody Roberts? Is he still alive?
No, he died in the last year or two.
Bill Winters and I worked together at WHAP in Hopewell, Virginia in 1962. He was from North Carolina. I was responsible for the loss of his first wife.
Wait a minute.
Congratulations.
Well, I was very young and didn't know what I was doing. So
Yeah,
Like
when he died-
I remember when I first came to Hartford, which was in March of 1970. You were doing afternoon drive, I think, between 3 and 6 or 4
Yes.
7, something to that effect. A POP just really blanketed Hartford. For anybody who was going to listen to Top 40 radio, they just did it so well. I remember hearing it everywhere. And then right around that time in 70, 71, things began to change, and POP started to lose its impact, and DRC started to get back into the game of what they were originally known for as a personality, promotion-minded radio station. And they sunk some bucks into it, and it just turned around through the early 1970s. But you left in 1970, correct?
Yeah, in 1970, they fired Danny Clayton. And that sort of changed everything. But Danny had fired me the month before they fired him. And I was doing part-time.
This is before Scott St. James came. This is before Scott St. James came.
Yeah, well, he replaced me.
Oh, okay. That's the way.
For the afternoons.
Right.
Then Joe Amaturo, who owned the radio station, took me down to Fort Lauderdale, where I then ran all of his. I was the national program director for the Amaturo group.
And I bought one of his stations in Fort Lauderdale and turned it into a Spanish station and became #1 in the market.
WFTL?
Joe is still alive,
the FM 106.7.
Oh, right. Well, that was
when did he die?
FM. Then it was some disco oriented.
It wasn't that long ago because
just for a minute.
In contact with his son, and
yeah, Joe died in August of 19. He was 88.
What?
What?
Joe Barbarette died in August.
Oh, no, I'm talking about Joe Amaturo.
Oh, no. I'm not sure about Amaturo.
No, I think he's still alive at 100.
I brought Barbarette down to Fort Lauderdale and made him my news director. And then the next time I saw him after I was at IOD, he was running a store on Commercial Boulevard.
Barbarette was, I think Barbarette was the news director, still news director when Hal was there, right? Because I think, because Barbarette was replaced by Charlie Steiner about the same time that that Greaseman and I showed up. So that was when Judge and Bill Coleman and Barbarette all left at the same time, I think.
When I first met when I first met Joe, he was working for Senator
Todd.
Todd, yeah, he was his PR guy, and he hired me and Ed Clancy to do his commercials for him, all of that stuff. And he was a good guy. Barbarette was a real nice guy.
Yeah, somebody just said they somebody, and maybe it was one of you guys. Somebody said that they sent the open letter to his family because he did the he voiced the open letter to JFK.
Yeah, Bryant Michaud did that.
Oh, he did?
Bryant Thomas.
Okay, you sent it down to him. And Joe passed away when?
August of 19. So he was 88 at that point. He was living in Florida still.
Set of pipes on that guy, huh?
No.
Now, what about Shepard? What happened to him?
Aaron Shepard?
Yeah.
He also is passed away several years ago now. Hang on, let me look for that.
I think it was about 2 years ago, wasn't it? He was in Albany.
He'd actually retired. He did spend most of his time up at WROW in Albany, but he passed away in February of 2020 at the age of 87.
Wow.
I think at the end he was living in Boston where he had a sister.
Okay. Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Yep. What?
Okay. I think I had myself muted. I was trying to make a few comments. I want to say hello to Mike Green because I owe my job at WPOP to Mike Green.
Uh-oh. What did I do?
You left.
You made a hole.
you left in I think about October of 70.
Correct.
And Lou Morton called me. I was working up in Worcester at WAAB, and he wanted to know if I wanted to come down and take a job as the production guy. And do weekends also. So I got the job doing production 4 days a week, had Wednesdays off, and I did air shifts on Saturday and Sunday. But that was because you left.
Yeah.
Now, Ed Bruder, you guys, I remember how Danny Thomas was very much involved with Teenagers March Against Leukemia for both DRC and POP. Ed, who was it that went down to St. Jude's. Was it Shepard or was it Barbarette? Who went down there and did the interviews at St. Jude's down in Texas? Only because of the fact, or not Texas, Memphis. I know there's audio on the obg.com site of actually interviewing some of the people that were at the hospital. Do you know what I'm talking about, Ed?
I do. That was Aaron Shepard, and DRC got a hold of it. You all know what the Jerry Lewis telethon did for muscular dystrophy. Back in the 60s, early 60s, Danny Thomas did the same kind of thing for St. Jude's Children's Hospital. And Hartford had the largest collection from kids getting pledges in the country. So Danny Thomas actually came to Hartford and appeared at the Bushnell as kind of a reward for all the kids that took part, and did a couple of shows for them. And I think DRC had it either 3 or 4 years, and then suddenly the promotion turned up on POP for 1 year.
Yeah.
And then the Danny Thomas Radiothon went away after that, or the Walkathon, I should
Well,
say.
you know,
No, the Radiothon, we had it at POP in 75.
Oh.
And Danny Thomas came.
Yeah.
And I have a picture.
Oh, yeah.
A picture of me, Danny Thomas, TJ Lambert, and Charlie Steiner.
Oh boy.
And then when POP changed format, the Radiothon went over to RCQ for a year or two.
Yeah, and then it also went over to YZ had it in years after that. And it was interesting because I do remember the very early years of the Teenagers March Against Leukemia, where they would all go out like on a Sunday afternoon and go door to door and collect all that money. And I do remember my sister damn near had a heart attack because Danny Thomas called the house one time to talk to my dad, and she was that was when Make Room for Daddy was on and everything else, and she was running in circles. And years later, I bumped into a Hartford Current newspaper boy, and he goes, "I was collecting at your house, and your father actually handed me the phone, and I was on the phone with Danny Thomas." The paper boy. But I do remember when he came to Hartford, my dad told us how I don't remember the exact phraseology. It may have been more colorful. I don't know. He was sitting with his back towards the door, and my dad was at the typewriter, and he saw out of the corner of his eye, large cigar walking into the room with a man connected to it. And he glanced over and he said something like, yeah, sit down. Yeah, I'll be with you in a minute. I'll be with you in a minute. And Danny Thomas supposedly said something like, "Parker, you son of a bitch." He said, "Hey, I just wanted to tell someone as important as you to wait for someone like me someday." But yeah, Danny Thomas was really, like Ed was saying, was really blown away with what Hartford was able to do to get that whole place started.
Last week you asked me to contact a lot of the WPOP guys, and I sent out an email, and Lee got a copy of that too, but I only got about 3 responses. Matter of fact, one of the responses was Rusty Potts.
Oh,
Rusty is still alive and well, and he's down in Florida, and he told me he's still working for WLNG from Florida. He said he does some kind of consulting for them for sales. He was more of a sales guy at the end of his career down at LNG, and he still does training for salesmen there.
Oh my God!
So wow. He said he might join the meeting this morning, but
he'd be great, especially
if Mike Green is here. And by the way, Tom Tyler is Tom Melanson.
Tom Melanson, yeah.
And I did send him an email, and I got a bounce on the email. I gotta track him down. He runs a personnel business down in I think it's Old Lyme or Old Saybrook. I can't remember.
It's Old Saybrook. He lives in Old Saybrook. Is that where it is?
Yeah.
He had a big house there. And Catherine is actually the one who went to work for Olson Temp Agency first when she left TIC, and then he was doing clerical work at her office, and then they invested together and started her own agency, and it really took off, temp agency.
Yeah. I'll have to give him a call, see if I can get a hold of him. Come on, he could probably have some good POP stories and some good WFIL stories.
And some good TIC stories too. Because
I'm still in touch with Dickie Heatherton. He's out in Los Angeles.
Oh, really? I used to work with him.
Yeah.
I invited Dick Heatherton a couple of months ago. I sent him an email and told him about these meetings, and he kind of blew it off. It's like he wasn't interested.
Oh, I'm going to send him an email.
He had a stroke, and he's coming back though. He's in pretty good shape.
Who, Dick?
Steve O'Brien is around. I've seen him and had lunch with him over in Naples. A big Bill Love I'm still in touch with. He's at some radio station playing country music in Illinois. I'm trying to think of who else. Joe Amaturo is 100 years old, and I saw him for breakfast a few days ago.
In fact, Judge, didn't you also hear back from Danny Clayton?
I did, and he was he had some medical issues about maybe 6 months ago, and I did hear back from him. But he says he was an old morning man, but he says he can't get up this early. He's out in Las Vegas, so what are we at 7 o'clock in the morning, set Vegas time? But I sent out an email this morning again to all these guys, even though I didn't hear from a lot of them, and I reminded them, hey, the meeting is on. And I told them that you can join anytime you want. You can come in mid-meeting, and you can leave anytime you want. So maybe some of them will pop up before the meeting's over.
Anybody stay in touch? Anybody stay in touch with the Grease man at all?
He was included on that email, but I didn't get a reply from them.
I'm kind of in touch with him. I mean, we've had some back and forth. I had a medical issue about 4 or 5 years ago, and I didn't. My previous doctor had retired, and so I had to go to a walk-in medical place in Newington, and the doctor had gone to Georgetown University sometime in the early 80s, and I don't know if he put 2 and 2 together and connected me with Greaseman, but somehow it came up in the conversation that when he was in college, he was a huge Greaseman fan, and so I got a hold of Grease and told him about this doctor who was he wasn't discussing my issue. He was just going on about the Greaseman the whole time we were in his office.
Judge, you mentioned Rusty Potts, or Randy Potts, which he was known as for a while at CCC. But when he was at POP, he had a split personality because he was one of the guys that did a utility shift. He did news on the weekends as Ron Jackson, and then he was Rusty Potts during I guess it's the other way around. He did news during the week, and he was Ron Jackson on weekends. And POP seemed to do that with a number of their utility guys over the years.
Hey, so when Greaseman got in that issue about racial comments, right after that, I had a radio station in Fort Wayne, Indiana, that was playing hip hop and R&B, and I wanted to hire him as the morning man. Just thinking, wow, I mean, what a wild idea to put a guy who had that kind of thing, hanging over his head, being the morning man at an urban station. But I got so much pushback from all the employees that I didn't do it. But I just thought it was a great idea. It was a Lee Sims kind of idea.
Oh God.
Lee Sims was my favorite. You too, Pete, right?
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
I mean, for me, it was the honor of the world to work with Lee Sims.
Where is he now?
He passed away earlier this year. No,
not earlier this year, Ed. A couple years ago, 2 years ago.
You're right. It was
2 or 3 years ago. He killed himself. He had stomach cancer and he killed himself.
It was actually longer than that. It was January in 2015. He was 71.
Wow.
Wow, that's young.
And he was always with the hang it in your ear, right?
Yeah, now that you say that, yeah.
I always remember Lee Baby Sims hanging in your ear.
POP had flashes of brilliance. Their problem was that just like any of us who have worked at a ton of radio stations have seen unstable management, and POP was unstable. POP was unstable management that kept changing, just like MEX. Yeah. And so they'd have Greaseman, they had Lee Baby Sims. I mean, they had Jackson Armstrong. They had some of the greatest jocks in the country, and they just couldn't. They didn't have the glue to hold it together.
When I first got there in October of 1970, Lou Morton hired me. Lou was the daytime program director, and Bob Piva was the nighttime director. So we got 2 program directors. It was a little bit dysfunctional. Bob Piva was another one I sent an email to, and I was hoping he would join today too.
Hal,
he turned you down. If I don't remember if you saw it, but Lou Morton, you got to remember, was the sports guy up
Right.
until they made him program director.
Oh, he was the program director at that time. Right? I guess maybe right
No,
after you left.
He became, the minute Danny got fired, they moved Lou Morton up as program director.
Right.
He had not been on the air in like 15 years. All he was the sports guy.
Right.
years.
Mike, he actually had been the morning guy at POP in the mid 60s for a short time as Kilroy.
Yeah, exactly. And he was not at all, I mean, the Drake format was alien to him, and he just threw the whole thing away and changed everything. And
Well,
years
unfortunately,
years later, he was working. Lou was working at WKCI when I was made operations manager. I had to let him go because he kept going out to the trunk of his car during his shift.
He wound up at he wound up doing mornings at WATR when I was programming YZ.
Oh,
so this is like 76.
well, that was one of the problems at
77.
WPOP because Lou Morton was the program director, but unfortunately he was an alcoholic. And,
Right.
So it was rough.
Who was the greatest program director of POP? Was it Danny Clayton?
No, it was probably before him. The guy who hired me was Woody Roberts.
Woody Roberts.
And Woody hired me to come up from from Big Ways in Charlotte. And 2 weeks later, when I got there and Frank Holler picked me up at the airport, Woody had already left to go down to Texas. So I never met Woody.
And Woody took the girl that I was in love with in high school, this girl that I had a huge crush on. She went with him to Texas.
Ah.
And where is she today?
Dave,
there were some,
I don't know, and I don't want to see it.
There were some cute girls around.
She's in Arizona or that area with her dogs.
New Mexico, right?
What?
Is it New Mexico, Clark?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Lee, when did Dick Springfield arrive?
I think, well, Judge was there at the time, I think.
It was right after Merle Griffin bought the station.
Yeah.
Yeah, about that.
I was going to say, you know, when you're discussing how good the station was, and then when it started to crater, I think that that somewhat coincided with Merv buying the place, and I mean, I like Dick Springfield, but yeah, I think he did not bring the program director chops to the station.
He was
he hired me, so
that wasn't the Dick Springfield from the research group, was it?
Yes, absolutely was.
It was no fooling.
He was a very nervous guy. I mean, he was always on edge. He died very young too.
Yeah,
he had a bad heart.
Yeah.
Bad heart.
And did Bill Winters go to WBZ after?
He did very briefly, but then he ended up at CBS FM. In fact, I think in between there, he went to Boston and then went to Wibbage in Philadelphia for Buckley.
Yeah, no, because I recall when he came to Boston,
and then he went to CBS FM, which is where he was when he passed.
Yeah. Bill also had a slight drinking problem.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
You know, speaking of Wibbage, that building is still there. Lafayette Hill, PA, the original building that, you know, guys like Joe Niagara were at back in the 50s. It's a religious station, Wizard, WZZD, and they're still in that same building. It's got a lot of history.
Hey, Lee, what we noticed, you know, of course, you got POP behind you there. What year did you guys walk out of that station and go up to the top of Cedar Mountain?
You know, I'll be damned if I can remember. It's all, you know, because that was after I was let go and after the format changed. I was there in 74 and 75, and then they changed the format to all news, and I was gone. I pitched him on making me the production director, because Lance Drake had left, but TJ Lambert was the production director, because Pellegrino thought that, you know, being a disc jockey, I would they would hire me as the production director in the first disc jockey job that became available and on the market, I would race out of town and go. But I ended up working at a ad agency in town till 78. And when they realized I wasn't really bolting out of town, when Dick Fox left the production directing gig, they hired me back as the production director. And so I was there from 78 to 97. And who was there when and when we did stuff, I honestly don't remember when it all took place.
A question, does
It's,
anybody
the
remember?
backdrop is great, Lee. I see the control room window right over your shoulder.
Does
Hey,
anybody-
Slee, I like your shirt. I have one just like it.
Oh, that
I wore
too.
it yesterday.
Yeah, I wore it yesterday, but I kept it. I kept it on in honor of this.
Well, I
occasion.
knew that. That's why I didn't wear mine today.
Does anybody know whatever happened to Barbara Bodner?
You know, I was just going to ask that question. It read my
think
mind.
she's still in the Hartford area somewhere, but
Yeah, she
I
did,
don't know.
I know that she ended up building an enormous agency, Bodner and Gordon.
Yep.
Bodner, Fox, and Gordon. Yeah,
Well, Peter Fox.
Peter Fox, and
it was originally three of us, me, Peter Fox, and Barbara, and it was called Ray Productions, RE Productions. And then I told him to shove it, and I don't know what happened. Peter had a small drink.
Peter is down in North Carolina. He's still working, still putting stuff together and playing golf. And I remember when he went down, because I did some freelance for him for a place from some particular company, and he liked it, and they liked him, and they hired him, and he wound up moving down to North Carolina and doing very well.
Barbara had a great voice for commercial production, and it was she had a very good sultry delivery. And of course, POP didn't have a large female staff, so she did a lot of the voice work when it required a female voice.
Mm-hmm.
we had Susan Riggs when I got there. She had replaced Ed Clancy because they killed, I don't know if it was Springfield or who, but killed his midday talk show, and then just went with a jock. I think it was Bill Coleman and Bill Neal.
Oh, yeah.
And then Springfield let him go, and I replaced him.
That Ed Clancy midday show was worth a mention. I don't know who came up with the idea, but for about a year, he did that the sex talk thing where women would call in, kind of what Bill Balance was doing in Los Angeles. And
Women's Glib.
Women's Glib, exactly. It was an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I was very
incredible ratings. It was just a dynamite, but the problem was the Catholic Church in Hartford frowned upon it and was very, very instrumental in getting that taken off the air.
Huh.
A lot of advertisers canceled, even though it had big ratings. A lot of advertisers would not advertise on the show because of the subject matter.
I remember Corson telling me, don't worry about that show. That's going to go away soon. That's not good. That's not going to happen.
It lasted 6 months.
Yeah.
Was who did the Hotline show?
Ed, when he started there in '66, Ed Clancy did, and he replaced Sam Holman, I think, the former ABC guy,
Right.
who had also done that. It was like 10 o'clock at night or 10:30 at night to midnight.
Yeah, I think one year they did a lot of different things, but I remember there was a hotline program on virginity, and the next jock played Cherry Cherry coming out of it.
The good old days.
And why not?
I have to tell you a story. Maybe I might have told this story already, but one of the things that I did when I first got there was on Sunday nights, Father Nadalny had a show on.
Oh, God.
And
He's
it was
still
geared
alive, I
towards,
understand.
teenagers. They wanted to,
Ed
the teenagers
Nadalny.
would call in and discuss their problems and whatever. But I remember one time a kid called in and he wanted to know if asking Father Nadalny if having a wet dream was a sin. And Father Nadalny said, no, it's perfectly all right. As a matter of fact, it's one of God's blessing to priests.
Jack Carney tells the story about his show was on right before or or right after, right before Nadolny. I guess he was doing like overnights or something, and Nadolny would come in on Sunday morning, and Jack would be working the phones, shall we say, and and he's driving off to meet whoever he had just spoken with on the phone, and Nadolny kind of goes off on people, disc jockeys having sexual encounters with women they meet on the phone. Father
I don't
Ed's
think
just
any.
going-
I don't think any of us ever did that, right?
Oh, no.
No,
Absolutely not.
Hey, I
That's
have a
what-
question for you, WDRC guys. Was Lala a fixture over there?
Oh dear God!
God, yes.
Oh dear God!
Are you kidding?
And
Jeez.
she
Ed,
called
you're-
me.
you're
She
right
called.
along.
She called me at DRC, and then I went over to RCQ, did mornings, and she called me there too. I never
Oh.
met the lady. I didn't even know whether she was for real, but I got
I
the
met her
impression.
once.
I
I
got
met
the
her
impression
once.
she was.
I
Did you
saw
really?
her driving. She had a license plate that said Lala, and she was driving around in this car with bleached blonde hair, and she was what you might call a plump individual. And
Yes.
bleached
she-
blonde hair,
you know,
and
Ted,
she's
she-
driving
she-
around with Lala on her license plate. And one of the funniest things was Judd Otis. When I was doing afternoon drive, when I was doing that split thing, and Judd Otis doing a conversation with Lala on the telephone. I mean, if you could have recorded that,
Ted,
it would have been hysterical.
Her introduction was telling me about how she once serviced the entire Hartford Whalers.
Whalers.
Yeah.
That's right.
Absolutely.
You know, it's the theory of the inverse voice. The better they sounded on the phone,
Oh,
the
yeah.
uglier they were in person.
I remember we had a speakerphone in the studio, and Kathy Kathy Skierkowski, who is now who's married to Jerry Brooks. Kathy was the general manager's secretary, and she was coming in to give me some kind of paperwork, and Lala is calling on the phone, and Kathy just read her the riot act. she took off on her. Said, "What kind of a slut are you? And what are you doing this for?" And it was kind of funny.
Jack Armstrong would be on the air with that speakerphone, and he'd be famous for saying, "Well, come on down to the window. Let me see what you look like."
It's frightening sometimes.
I don't know. I kind of miss it.
You know, one thing about POP in the late 60s, they actually had a pretty robust news department. Now, certainly DRC had a solid news department with Walt Dibble and later Lon Landis and Chuck Krause. But at POP, Chuck Krause was news director at one point before Joe Barbarette. And you had Randy Brock and Ed Clancy. And Barbara Bodner sometimes did news. And there was another
Barbara was she did all the community events. She was known as Salome Grinder.
Chuck Krause
She
is
would come
alive
on
and
and do
well
all
in
the
Pennsylvania. I got to work with Chuck when we were across the hall from each other at WEEI in Boston. And Chuck used to have a one of those early Mercury Cougars with the license plate Grok, Grok, for Stranger in a Strange Land. And Chuck taught me a lot about inflection with news. Great guy.
Now, what about now? Wasn't Chuck? Now you said Chuck before Joe Barbarette. Is that what you said, Ed?
Yeah, Chuck worked at POP as news director about 67, 68. And I think he was replaced by Tracy Cole, who was then replaced by Barbarette, if I'm remembering this correctly.
Chuck was still there in 69. I know that.
When you were there?
Ooh,
Yeah,
here comes
because
TJ Lambert.
TJ
Because
Lambert.
he
Wow.
took me aside and taught me about a few things.
TJ Lambert just came in.
Yep. His video isn't on yet, but he's coming.
There's TJ.
After Barbarette, then Charlie Steiner was the news director. When I got there in 74, we had Charlie Steiner, Lloyd Wimbish, Susan Riggs, Jim Marco, and
Bryant Thomas.
And Bryant wasn't there at that point,
But Judge, you worked with Bryant at POP, I think.
Yeah, he did news for him when I was doing mornings there. He was the newsman.
yeah, we had a five as a top 40 station. We had a five full-time people in the news department, and Rick O'Connor was doing sports. He was the overnight jock.
Right.
And then when we switched to all news, that he stayed on as the sports guy.
Did any of you guys ever work?
Mike Burke was the other. Because speaking of Lala, Mike used to say that she would call him and she wanted to do him because he could introduce her to Lowell Weicker.
Well, there's a reason.
Lala and Lowell. Okay.
Wow.
What about Joanne Nasty? Wasn't she on during that time?
No, she was there. She was there.
perhaps.
She was there as the news director during the All News after Charlie left, and I think Bob Michaels was the news director for a while, and then Bob didn't really like being news director, and I think then Joanne was hired and became news director.
Lee, who were the two people that did the first the morning drive on WPOP when it went news? Do you recall?
It was
Dominique Avery?
Dominique Avery, and I think was it Bob Michaels or was it Rad Berkey?
I think it was Bob Michaels, because Bob Craig, you did the last music show on POP on Sunday, and there are promos during that show with Dominique and Bob Michaels talking about how they'll be the new hosts the next morning.
So, is it the Bob Michaels that was the newsman in New Haven? Is that who you guys are talking about?
Probably, because I know he was at PLR, but when it was Popular 99, when it was NHC.
Well, and Dominique was our news director at Waves before she went to POP.
Hey, Pete, was Bob Michaels in the market when you were there?
Bob was at ICC before that.
No, was from Bridgeport.
Yeah, he was at WICC. I know it for sure.
Because he was my newsman at NHC in New Haven, and man, I thought he was good.
It's an interesting philosophical argument.
boys.
Do you think POP would have lasted longer as a music station had it had an FM affiliate to simulcast like DRC?
Oh yeah.
Well,
I'm glad TJ's on. TJ and I we were begging Al Pellegrino to put what was on WPOP, to put it on the FM and continue it, because Greaseman was starting to make some he was starting to make some noise in the Hartford market, and that would have been a great signal to have WPOP on.
Every PD of WAVZ tried to do that starting in 1975, and I finally succeeded in 79 with KC 101.
What a great radio station that was, brother. Wow.
Thank you.
There's
Thank you.
TJ.
There he is.
Yeah, but we moved it in summer of 79.
The Judge.
Well, when Al Pellegrino was running WPOP, they had WIOF.
Yep.
And Al
Yeah.
the IOF with Lou Terry and Jack Carney.
Ken Griffin was there for a while.
As the first client I ever
Scott.
had as a broadcast advisor after leaving CBS. And that was quite something.
Hey, Pete.
We played oldies on Saturdays and hit number one with it. This was before the other oldie stations really came to being. It was a lot of fun. Al Pellegrino was a great guy.
Totally.
I ended up dealing with
Amen.
a cousin who was the attorney for Quinnipiac when I joined the Pete Sallant Retiree Club in 1220.
Oh gosh.
Station.
It was
but I have an
interesting
FM to go
because,
with it if I can pull off the money. So it could be the home for the terminally groovy. You never know.
I know that when I realized my dad wasn't coming back to Big D back in 1983, I really didn't want to be there. My mom and dad had been there and met there in the 40s, and it flowed through my veins. And I just when the reality was he wasn't coming there, there really was, and it wasn't. I mean, the whole fun of the place, that fun just got sucked out of it. And once he was there, it became more. When he was gone, it was more of a business. So when I finally realized he wasn't, and I waited for a few months, when I realized he wasn't coming back, I said, you know, Dad, I want to stay in the business and I want to stay in this market. Who would you suggest? He goes, Al Pellegrino. He says, it's as good as it gets. And it's funny because all those years later, people say, oh, did your dad know that you went to POP? It was his recommendation based on that guy that ran the place. So that had a lot to do it. And I never regretted it. It was just a great man to be with.
How about TJ giving us some WPOP stories?
Oh, boy.
Oh, good. La, 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 la. They're, oh, God, endless. Just endless stories. I can't even think of one off the top of my head, other than the fact that Hal would get off the air at 6 or 7, and he would head over to Berlin to do what was the club over there? How that we did
Knickerbocker Pub.
Yeah, the Knickerbocker or the what?
The Knickerbocker Pub. It's where there's a Mexican restaurant on the Berlin Turnpike now.
Yeah.
Right next to McDonald's.
Yeah. Steve and I would do Taco Tuesday there a lot.
That's right.
Well, unbeknownst to most, Hal and I would share a bowl before he would head out. So the first 30 minutes, it was just jingles and music, and Hal had to concentrate whether it was the brake or the clutch on his Carmen Ghia.
Captain Smoke.
Captain Smoke. Or when all the POP guys would get together at house and watch Monty Python. My God Almighty, with Jack and Hal. Oh my God, we would all get together. It would be Spamalot, and I'd just laugh our asses off for hours and hours and hours. It was such a great time to be there when, and then Greasy showed up and he would leave voicemails on your home phone that were classics. I wish I had them. I really wish I would have kept them because they were just classics. So, Greasy's there, and I keep up with him. I keep up with the Pig and others. So, yeah, good times. A lot of laughs.
Speaking who hired you at POP?
Bob Paiva.
Paiva, okay.
Speaking of the Pig,
Paiva hired me.
And Lala, when Springfield came,
oh Lord,
he took the Lala Means I Love You cart out of the studio. when Ronnie Lake, the Rock and Roll Pig, got hired, I remember it like it was yesterday. He pulled up to the station in his blue Camaro with a U-Haul trailer behind it. And he had spoken with Bill Love in Louisville, and so he knew the deal. For the first night he was on the air, he brings his own cart of La La Means I Love You and plays it, and got the phone call because that was like the bat signal. If you played that, the phone would ring.
Speaking of Springfield and La La, one between shifts, I guess Hal must have played a La La, or I did. One of us did towards the either end or beginning of a show. And old Springfield was in the back, and it was Augie Santana's kid goes, "Why is Mr. Springfield jumping around in the car in the back?"
Yeah. That was Tony Nardelli's stories. And Mr. Nardelli, what's wrong with Mr. Springfield?
Yeah. Oh God Almighty, La La! Oh my goodness.
Yeah. Dave's going to have a lot of editing to do on this show.
Oh God, yes, I am.
Imagine.
Let's get back to the Nadali story so I can keep it clean.
Hey, how about you can imagine when you got Al Gates, Gary Gerard, Richard, and the Duke of Despair, and Hal, and me, and Carney, and Lee, and everybody, and we're doing, get this, Bridal Fair. Oh my God! Oh, those stories alone, and my apartment was near where we did it, so it was like a spinning wheel for a while. So.
We
it was awesome.
We would go to Brock's every night, and then
for sure.
Brock's would close, and then we go to your place on Fenn Road.
Yeah.
Right,
Newington. And as long, and the nice thing was, even if it was snowing, it was a heated driveway. So even if it was snowing, we could get there. It didn't matter. There was no excuse not to show up. Yeah.
Right,
and Grease lived like 2 buildings over.
Horny jocks, I'll tell you.
Well, it sounds like you guys had a better time at POP than we did in New Haven.
We had a great. This is the indication of what a good time we had. New Year's Eve from 1974 to 1975. We all, the entire air staff, got together, not as a station function or anything. We just all got together for New Year's Eve to hang out with each other. That's what it was like.
Yeah.
You know,
There was a lot of hanging out.
Well, we got
I can
together
understand that. I can understand that at DRC with people aligning with either Charlie or Corson, and obviously aligning away from Corson as far as possible. But you know, we in New Haven, we just kind of well, I mean, anytime we did it, we shared a bowl, it would be in the studio, but we didn't see each other outside of the radio station. Yeah. And like when Jerry Brooks came down to join us, I got the impression that POP was a real straight-laced place. I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, no.
Bob DeLisa was the guy that opened the Knickerbocker Pub. It was one of the original.
That's right. Right.
1970 or so.
Right.
And then he opened a place called Fast Eddie's, which was further on down the Berlin Turnpike. That was a hangout for us too. And I remember one time, TJ, I remember this. It was Jim Croce and Harry Chapin came in. I think it was the. I forget what it was for. Maybe it's some kind of
April Fool's
charity tribute, and we all wound up at
St. Jude's. St. Jude's.
Maybe it was. We all wound up at Fast Eddie's playing bumper pool together. That was a good time.
They both died, and then the following year, we had different celebrities. I think I had Jim Stafford on my show, and somebody, Roger Miller, I think.
I had my buddies, the boys, come in and do the show with me, and then we had Joey Reynolds one night, and he looped "For the Love of Money."
Oh, I remember that.
The intro to "For the Love of Money," it just ran, and we were all out having dinner while that's running on the loop.
And Lance Drake and I did that, and we didn't tell Springfield. We didn't tell Springfield we were going to do it. Because I think I've mentioned this before on the call, but Joey was going to come in, sit in on my show with me, but Springfield did not publicize it in any way because he didn't want Charlie to find out, as if Charlie wasn't going to find out and do something to counter it. So we had this great thing that Springfield wouldn't publicize because he didn't want the competition to know. And so Joey came in and did my show, but we did this. Yeah, we did the intro loop for Love of Money, and it ran for probably 6 or 7 minutes at the beginning of the show, and we just did it to freak out Springfield.
Just yesterday, I saw a post that said that Joey was going back on the air.
Oh, really?
Wow.
I just got a text from Joey yesterday. He didn't say anything.
Well, I don't know.
Wow.
This was a post from
Clark, I saw the same thing.
Radio person that would have known, or actually it was even Joey teasing it, saying, "Stay tuned, I'll be back."
Let me look.
Hey, you never know.
He had named his Facebook page the late Joey Reynolds.
I love it.
I think he realized that a lot of people must have thought that he was actually dead, because recently I think he changed it to the great Joey Reynolds.
Lee, that episode where you had him come in to sit in with you was in, I think, like February of '74. And I, at that time, was working in St. Johnsbury, Vermont, on a station that went off the air at 11:15 at night. And somebody from Connecticut called me and said, "You won't believe this, Joey Reynolds is on POP tonight." So I was able to get back to my house just enough to hear about your last 15 minutes with him.
Lee, did you come straight from New Hampshire to POP?
Yes, I was at, that's the other thing. Pete and I used to be on opposite each other in New Hampshire. I was on WFEA doing afternoons. Pete was on WKBR doing afternoons. And our friend Mo Quirin was doing news on WGIR in the afternoons. And after in the evenings, the three of us would all go out and hang out at the Rusty Nail or the Red Onion or
one of those places that's closed now, and that was 73, 74.
Yeah.
Hey, so Pete and Lee, which of you guys worked with Bob Raines?
I did.
We did.
Bob hired me to be the first afternoon drive jock on WJBQ in Portland.
Wow.
Is that right?
Bo.
Bob was in
Bo. Well, he changed it to Bo.
He was Bob when he hired me for my. Well, he hired me as a part-timer. I was still in college, and he was the program director WFEA in my hometown, Manchester, New Hampshire.
Tomfoolery, was he?
He was a board op at DRC.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah, that's right. That's right, Jim. That's right. Because he had a first phone. That's why.
Yep.
He was the afternoon jock and program director at WFEA in Manchester, and he hired me to do weekends, and then he left, and they made me the afternoon guy. So I was there working part-time, and I started full-time literally the day after I graduated from college.
Wow. I went to St. A's for a year and a half.
Wow.
We won't talk about that.
Sorry to hear that, Jim.
I got dragged into radio voluntarily. But
he and I were an exchange program.
When I was supposed
from Connecticut, he was from New Hampshire, but he moved to Connecticut and
when I was supposed to be working,
though, the same.
When I was supposed to be working, studying, I was working at GIR, doing a nighttime, and they were doing like easy listening, NBC affiliate. My biggest claim to fame was I did a cut-in for a political report for NBC News. I had no idea what the hell I was talking about, but that hasn't changed on NBC News. And, you know, I mean, Manchester was, and I used to hang around KBR, which was,
what a small world. What an incredibly small world.
When I was hanging around there, Jack
Casey
was there,
Jack Casey,
and Dick McDonough was there.
Yeah.
Charlie Shue, Charlie Shue was there. Don Parker.
And how about Lee Roberts?
Lee Roberts was there. Yeah.
Eddie B. Baker.
Yeah.
Lee Roberts should be on these calls. I always was. Lee Roberts sounded off the air totally different.
Bobby Cohen.
Bobby Cohen.
He was like he went into a phone booth and changed. It was like he would be off the air. He'd be, "Hi, how you doing? Nice to see you." Then he'd go into the booth, and all of a sudden, this big voice came out. You know, totally different.
Well, same with Bill St. James.
Yeah.
Bill St. James off the air is like, "Hey, how you doing, man? You want to get something to eat?"
We were talking about people using two different names on the air, and Bobby Cohen at WFEA, if he was a jock, he was R.W. Churchill. But if he was doing the news, he was Hammond Egger.
Oh Lord.
He was totally flawless doing a newscast. I never heard him botch a word ever. He's not in the greatest health now. I believe he has Parkinson's.
No, he has Parkinson's. Yes.
Yeah.
The only time Lee ever botched a newscast was that famous RKO in the middle of the night.
Oh, I heard that.
Ed, I have an air check of that, Ed.
I'd love to hear it.
It's classic. It's classic.
And he laughs for like 2.5 minutes, and then he says, "We'll be back in a moment," or something like
Guys,
that.
I'm going to, and let's pause for this announcement, but if any of us and any of our friends ever get to a point where they need help, I can tell you, my number one charity after the Folds of Honor is the Broadcasters Foundation. And if there's anything you want to donate or anything, there are names that would blow you away.
Really?
That ended up getting help through medical or mortgage covered or you name it. And they have taken care of. And guys, we know, by the way.
TJ, how can I get Bo? How can I get Bo onto them so maybe he can get some help?
Go to bfoa.org.
Is Erica Farber still involved with that?
Scott Herman is running
there's
it
a bunch.
now, I think.
Yeah. So Tim McCarthy's running it. Scott Herman is the chairman, and my buddy Peter Doyle, who a lot of you know from Interrep, is the vice president. and they do a lot of fundraisers. They do a golf tournament. I played in one this year in Greenwich. They do the Golden Mike Award, and they do another golf tournament out in Las Vegas. And they raised last year. They gave out like $1.5 million, guys, in grants.
Wow.
So for like when a hurricane hits, and you got these broadcasters on the balls of their ass, and they're sitting there going, "What am I going to do now?"
Yep.
And boom, they go in and they help them cover mortgages until they can get the station back and get back on the air and so on and so forth. But it's bfoa.org. And if you guys want to send me an email or a note, please do. By all means do. And Tim McCarthy and Peter Doyle. And it says on the website how you apply for help.
Okay.
And it goes right as soon as it is submitted, they get together with the executive committee, and they thumbs up, thumbs down, and it's very rare thumbs down. Very rare. If somebody really needs to help to get
really
through,
needs it.
And Bo, and I mean, what an iconic guy, and would absolutely. So
Nice
go on
guy,
that
too.
website, and you'll see it.
Okay, we'll do.
Can you contribute there too?
And if you look at when you look at who's on the board, it's a little East Coast elite centric. I'm fighting to get some people in the West on it, but you see who's on that board. It's I don't think there's many names that any of us wouldn't recognize. So
TJ, can you
Scott?
Can you contribute to it?
Yes, absolutely you can. And it's like the season of giving, and they do Giving Tuesday, and they'll have different things. Wow. So if you get on there and sign up for their email, they'll keep you posted on all of that. But their website is easy to get around and easy to donate. I mean, a simple thing like if you want to send, like the Jim Thompson, my dearest late friend, there's a memorial for him, and I contribute to that. You know what I'm saying? So they've got different funds, that you can absolutely do. But Scott Knight, the great New England broadcaster, is a big contributor and money raiser for them.
Hey,
so if any of you know Scotty, yeah.
Excuse me, TJ, is there Facebook on this too? Is there somewhere we can find out more about it?
Yeah, sure. But if you just go to the website, but Facebook, yeah, they got a website. They've got it. They don't. You know what's funny? Every year for my birthday, I do the fundraiser for the BFOA. Every year.
Awesome.
And end up raising, I don't know, $1,000 or $2,000, and they get that money right away. So they know it's out there and that it's working.
Oh.
Steve Jones does his fundraiser for that. Daryl Brown is going to do it again. He stopped doing it. But yeah, there's a Facebook, there's a website. I don't think they're smart enough to get on TikTok yet for the young broadcasters, but we'll work on that.
That's awesome. What a great thing, because I tell you, just the amount of stuff my dad went through during the last 10 years or more of his life, it's even, it just psychologically what it does for you, knowing that there's a group of broadcasters out there, fellow broadcasters that would love to help you. Yeah. Psychologically, even if it's not about money, that support's powerful.
Paul Drew died almost penniless.
Yeah, he did.
After all his successes in broadcasting, a guy as big as him.
Well, I will tell you this: I believe there was a hand extended to Paul.
Well, I think that's probably true, TJ. All I'm saying is, there are guys who are very big guys who.
Oh yeah. In my hometown of Philadelphia, High Lit, unbelievable. There's a major name in Chicago, New York. I mean, guys that we all know. I'm telling you, it's names, and it's all confidential. So, like, if Bo gets help, it's not going to be like it's going to get plastered all over the place. What's going on with him? It's just it's help.
He's sick.
And the deal is, doesn't matter if you're retired, you just got in, or you're in, or it doesn't matter. But if you're in radio, television, broadcasting, and even if you've never given them $10, it doesn't matter. You're a broadcaster. You're in trouble. How can we help you?
I'll definitely go to the website today. I mean, Bo needs some help.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
God bless you.
Absolutely. Hey, I mean, if we could do that, it'd be awesome.
TJ, can't thank you enough. I mean, first of all, to join us today is awesome, but to bring us that something that's invaluable like that, TJ, is that's powerful. I never knew there was anything like that. And with a lot of the guys in the business that a lot of them have their pride, and they'll have their pride and they'd rather live in a Frigidaire box on the side of the Albany Avenue versus asking for help. But if they know that it stays within motherhood, that's great.
And the application the application is not that difficult, because I've just done one for somebody. I haven't heard back from them yet, but the application process isn't horrible either. It's very simple.
Yeah. I mean, they're not trying to make it hard. I mean, if you need it, jump on, man, and make sure you do that for both. That'd be a great thing. I'm going to invite Chuck Bennett and the Rock and Roll Pig to this call. These boys would laugh their ass off on this call. They'd have some fun and some stories too.
Chuck Bennett, was he in New Haven as well? Did I work with him at NHC? Pete?
I don't know.
I don't know.
I'm not sure. He came from Miami. He came from Miami. What was his name? Winter. But he was Chuck Bennett, and he came from like MAQ.
He was Bill Blizzard.
No, not MAQ. Bill Blizzard. That's right.
Bill Blizzard.
Oh.
Was he in Detroit at all?
I know he could have been.
He was in
Manchester. But I think he's back
in
Florida now.
I worked with a Chuck Bennett in New Haven.
That might be.
Yeah, he could have.
He worked. He came from. He was another one. It was I think at WKBR in Manchester before he came to Hartford.
Everybody was at WKBR, Lee, except half the people here. But yeah, right.
No, thank you.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks for the invite, guys. I'll be on.
Very much.
See ya.
Thanks, boys.
See you guys.
Bye, guys.
Your friend has got a lot to share.